Hello, world. My next guest oversees LivePerson's global marketing organization and is focused on growing scalable, measurable, and predictable world class demand generation machines with operational rigor. A 3-time enterprise software CMO, please join me in welcoming Ruth Zive to the show, CMO of LivePerson. Ruth, welcome. Are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
I am ready. I am ready.
Well, we are so excited that you were able to join us. And I know we've got a lot of really interesting conversation to be had around AI and just a lot of interesting marketing trends. But before we hop into that, I'm just curious. You're leading Live Person, chief marketing officer. I think a lot of us aspire to be that role. What is keeping you up at night these days professionally?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I try not to be kept up at night professionally. There are a lot of other things that certainly keep me up. But what I will say is that I am a very metrics-oriented marketer. I set stretch targets for myself and my team, and when I start to have real angst, is when we're not hitting those targets. I've got a competitive spirit, and I don't like to fall short. And so I always want to really get to the, why if we're falling short of the goal that we set for ourselves. So whether it's a shortfall in MQLs or pipeline, or, we've got a whole list of numbers that we track against. And when I see that we're not in the green, then it definitely eats at me.
I can relate. And as you share that, I have to say my heart started beating a little bit faster. And especially as marketers, right? Because when we're in the green, life is good. And when we're less in the green, I feel it's like the Hunger Games sometimes. So I feel that as you share that. So I do hope you get some sleep. I know Live Person is doing some incredible things. And for those listening in who may not know of Live Person, could you just share briefly what is Live Person and what is the value that you bring to your customers?
Sure, sure. So LivePerson is a software company. We are the enterprise leader in digital customer conversations. So what does that mean? Essentially, we build and sell AI-powered tools for the top brands in the world. Think of all of the brands that you love. Those are our customers. And these tools really empower these brands to have better conversations with their customers. So think of LivePerson sort of as the behind the scenes orchestrator and manager of all of the interactions and conversations that customers have with the brands that they love.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned AI, and
Mhm.
I know this episode is going to be geared. We're going to have a lot of conversations around it. But the first thing that comes to my mind as a modern day marketer thinking about AI is about ROI
Mm.
and, incorporating AI, whether it's into the marketing mix of things you're doing or the products that you're building. How do you get the real ROI of AI? Like, is it even possible?
Yeah, it's a great question, and goodness knows there's a lot of hype and hope around AI today. And I think that, the return on an investment in AI is really dependent on who it is that is trying to realize that return. So, if you think about it, the value of AI is going to be different to individuals than it is to businesses. It's going to be different to a large enterprise than it is to a mom and pop shop. Like, it's very nuanced. There is a lot of consideration. But I think today what is common across the board is that the world seems to have embraced, at least conceptually, this idea that AI, generative AI in particular, is going to change the world. There seems to be consistent consensus on that front. Um, but I think that people and businesses are having a really hard time understanding how to apply this new technology that's going to change the world to their business in a way that drives meaningful outcomes on the one hand, but is also sort of safe and responsible on the other hand. So when I think about ROI, I'm thinking about it from very much from a live person perspective. We serve large enterprise brands, mostly in very regulated markets. So we sort of take a measured approach. We encourage our customers to first really understand their customer conversations, and they can do that using AI powered analytics tools, which we have. And once you understand that data, you can identify the low-hanging fruit opportunities to apply this new technology. Then we encourage our customers to point the AI internally, really at their agents to help drive better productivity and impact, which is, a cost savings ROI on that front, as well as a customer loyalty or customer satisfaction return. So you do that first internally, and then once you really have mastered those opportunities and you're drawing a return from those investments, then you would point the AI consumer facing externally. So I walked you through a few steps there. And in so we call that our conversational flywheel, which maybe we'll get to later. But at each stage of this flywheel, there are identified measures where you can actually track the return on your investment. So I think we take a very measured but practical approach, and ultimately the return comes down to cost savings, productivity gains, customer satisfaction scores. Those are some of the measures that we track.
So I think it's really interesting. So I read recently a report that you guys released. I believe it was called The State of Customer Conversations. And
Right.
it's a great report. So for anyone who's looking to better understand AI, I think even the flywheel is mentioned there, and we will get more into the flywheel, but it's all about bridging the AI gap. And one
That's
of the
right.
things that really stood out to me when I was reading through this report is that it talks a lot about this gap between businesses and their customers when it comes to using artificial intelligence. And it kind of had me freaked out at first because you gave a stat in that report that was basically explaining and saying that as a brand, as businesses, we are so excited, enthusiastic to incorporate AI into everything we do. We're like hungry for it and we're putting it in our products. We're looking at it, how can we use it to create content, to measure, right? The sky's the limit. But then inside that same report, it said that our consumers or our customers are like less enthusiastic, if you will, about brands using AI to communicate with them. And that just stuck with me because I sat there as a marketer thinking, oh, well, we need to be putting ourselves in our customers' shoes. And if this is what they're thinking, right, how do we bridge the gap to communicate with our customers or communicate to the people we want to do business with as organizations? And I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about that report or just kind of what you're finding or what you're seeing and how to balance or close that gap.
Sure. Yeah, it was a really, really interesting finding. And the gap is very stark. We surveyed thousands of business leaders and consumers, and these are the numbers actually. 91% of business leaders feel very positive about using AI to engage with their customers, but only 50% of consumers share that enthusiasm. So that is the gap that the report really focuses on. And I think it's a multi-pronged attack to close this gap. I think as marketing leaders, we have to really be clear in how it is that we communicate the value to customers and the benefits of AI. I think there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty out there, and it's up to those of us who have been doing this for a while to really bring a prescriptive playbook of what best in class looks like. Because, brands are hungry to do this, but they want to do it in a way that's going to prioritize their customer interests, and they don't know how. And so being a lot more measured and prescriptive, which is what we try to do at LivePerson, I think helps build a sense of confidence on the part of customers that they are getting what they need from this technology. And that's especially true for brands that have a real regulatory interest. You don't want to piss off your customers, excuse my language, because then there is no ROI from the AI technology. If you alienate your customers because you violate some sort of privacy consideration, or you expose their data, or you give them a horrible experience, even if you're reducing costs, the long-term effect is going to be very negative for your brand. So I think bringing a playbook, being very prescriptive and measured, is going to help over time build confidence that, these are not the lousy chatbots that we all knew 4 or 5 years ago. The world has changed, and there is an opportunity to really add value. Um, so I think that meeting expectations manifests in different ways depending on what your specific customers want, right? Because different customers have different expectations. So you need to really do that hard work I mentioned of listening to them first, understanding their needs and interests relative to your brand, relative to your industry, because it's not the same across the board. So, I have some examples of live person customers who have done this really, really well. One of our customers, Frost Bank in Texas, is using AI not just to contain customers in automated conversations, but to really empower their agents. So there are no phone trees, no bots, just person-to-person conversations. But because the agents are assisted by the AI, those conversations are far more efficient and meaningful to the customer. Then you have on the other side of the spectrum clients like Mouser Electronics, then they're using AI to really open their arms to all of their customers. And they have bots in 13 different languages that they have faced to their consumers, and they're delivering really meaningful experiences in an automated way. And then another example, the Real, great brand, they're using our AI analytics tools to really, like I said, identify those low-hanging fruit opportunities where you can apply the AI. And they've been able to get all of their wait times below 1 minute so that customers really feel that they are receiving that luxury level experience that they need to deliver at their brand. So, like, the point is that there's really no single way to do this, and you should be really wary of a vendor that has a one size fits all approach.
So I mean, what's always fascinated me about live person, and actually something I've always admired, and you can feel it as you're, on your website, when you speak to anyone who works at live person or any one of your customers, you really value meaningful conversations. And I think what's impressive is that even with the introduction of AI into the market, right? That's still at the core is like these, right? You still value a human to human conversation. And I've heard you, I've heard a few podcasts that you were on. I know you've made the argument, right, that the most powerful tool in business isn't always a high-tech gadget platform or a cutting edge algorithm, but you always bring it back to that it's a humble act of a conversation. And I really strongly believe that. And I think this is a great opportunity to help us understand that AI flywheel of like where this humble act of a conversation fits in, what exactly does that mean, and how we can be honest and stay honest and humble, right? Even with all of these fantastic technologies around us. But again, focusing in on that humble act of a conversation or meaningful connection.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, you strip out all of the technology, whether it's, between uh, your friends and family. We certainly have technology that drives conversation amongst our friends and family. I mean, I'm Snapchatting and WhatsApping and texting with my kids on a daily basis. That's very common across the board. Same thing in business. You strip out the technology, and it is ultimately about the relationships that you build. And conversations are, if you distill it down to the unit that comprises the relationship or drives the relationship, it is the conversation. That is how we forge relationships, is through conversation. That's how we build trust. It's how we build loyalty. It's how we share experiences, is through the conversation. So at LivePerson, we very much see that as the single most important unit when brands look to build relationships with their customers. And it's a, ripe opportunity to introduce AI, but you don't want to do it in a way that's going to compromise the integrity of the conversation. You want to make sure that the conversation is still meaningful, that it's still authentic. And as you mentioned, we think that humans have to be in that loop in order to preserve that. You can't just eliminate humans and expect that those building blocks of relationships are going to be just as authentic or meaningful. So I think that, the opportunity is more so about the data that you can draw from these conversations, using that data. So that's the understand phase of our conversational flywheel, really mining that conversational data for the gold so that you can really understand your customer intimately. Then you want to make sure that you are connecting to your customer across all of your channels. So that's the next phase of the flywheel, which is connect, whether they're on social media, whether they're in your app, whether they're on your website. You want to connect to them, and you want to make sure that your back end systems are also adequately connected so that you have data across all of your platforms, whether those are your CRMs or your customer data platforms. Then the next phase, as I mentioned, is called assist. And that is about pointing the automation at the people inside of your business that interact directly with your customers, your live agents, and arming them with the insights from the data so that they can have the most meaningful and efficient conversation possible. And then the last phase of the flywheel is automate. That's when you turn your AI consumer facing to really drive a greater volume of conversations. And of course, it's a flywheel because the more you automate, the more data you accumulate about your customers, the better you're able to understand them and serve their needs, which is what feeds the next phase, which is understand. So the more that you go through these stages of the flywheel, the faster it spins, the better you understand your customers, the more likely they are to have their needs met. It's a virtuous cycle.
It's fantastic. It's actually fantastic. If anybody is interested in, reading more about the flywheel, I'll make sure to link the blog that you have about the flywheel right in the show notes because I think it's just such an easy way to understand how to measure, how to use, how to connect with people and use AI at the same time. I'm such a fan of this flywheel. So something I want to go back to, and it had me laughing, right? As a fellow mom, Snapchatting and Instagramming, reel watching with your kids. In your opinion, right? Because I don't think we can take social media out of the mix of how we communicate with our customers, especially now. In your opinion, how does social media play a role in building those meaningful conversations with brands?
Well, maybe I'll take it back to, the family example. I want to communicate with my kids where they're at. Sometimes that's in person. Hopefully, a lot of the time that's in person. Not all of my kids live in the same city as me, though. So sometimes that's through messaging. Sometimes it's on social media. They want to share something that they saw, or we have a group family chat on Snapchat. And so I want to make sure that I am able to meet them where they're at when they have the need to have the conversation with me, wherever that's at. Brands have the same responsibility if they really want to have a meaningful relationship with their customers. And, just as if my son sends me something on Snapchat and then 3 hours later he asks me about it on WhatsApp, that experience has to be connected. I have to know what the conversation was on the prior, social channel in order to continue it in iMessage, for instance. Brands have to do the same. They have to meet customers where they're at, and they have to have a holistic view of that customer experience and that customer conversation if they're going to cultivate a relationship that is authentic and founded on trust and meaningful. There is nothing more infuriating than when you're on the phone with a brand and they ask you for all of your information. And then 2 days later, you're talking to them on their website or even through email or some other channel, and you have to repeat yourself all over again. It's absolutely infuriating. And I think that brands have to step up and stitch together that experience through social. So being able to meet your customers where they're at, identify the right signals inside of that channel, collect the right data inside of that channel, but do it in a holistic way so that it's not disconnected from the rest of that customer's experience. I think that is the holy grail. That is where all brands are aspiring to get to. Not all vendors can deliver against that front. It's really a very asynchronous experience that you want to be able to deliver to your consumer.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. So I'm going to shift the question, a little bit. The next question I should say, because one thing that's top of mind is around B2B marketers and AI. And specifically conversational AI, when I think about right communicating with our customers, what do you feel is the one thing B2B marketers should know that maybe they don't, or is the most misunderstood thing about conversational AI that you could share with us today?
I think that AI generally, the term has become almost like white noise. Like, is there a software brand out there that isn't marketing something to do with AI? Is there a brand out there that isn't marketing something to do with AI? Like, it's become total white noise. And so I think as marketers, we have to resist that instinct to just fall in line with the hype and the jargon and keep repeating the same terms over and over again. I think we have to take a step back, really understand what makes us different, speak to business outcomes, practical applications, real world examples. Because we are like masters of hype in marketing, and I think that especially in this new age of AI, we have a responsibility to do things a little bit differently. And I think it's not resonating anymore. I think the world has come back down to earth and they just don't believe the hype. So I think the more that we can speak in practical terms, what are the real world outcomes? Where is the ROI? What is the prescriptive path forward? Like, give me the practical application, show me the playbook, the how to. I think that that is our responsibility as marketers.
I agree, and I love the what the we are the owners of the hype, the masters of hype. I feel like I need a cape, as a marketer, master of hype. I love that. So, last question for you, Ruth. Um, and I ask all the guests, and this is probably my most favorite question. And it actually, I think when I think about live person and meaningful connections, I think this is actually why I threw it into the show, right? What's one thing that you can share with us about yourself that isn't something that we can learn about you from your LinkedIn profile?
So that's a hard question because I am actually a pretty radically transparent person.
Hence why you are here.
Yeah, there you go. So, and I think I'm also pretty overexposed out there on the internet. Like, if you Google me, there is a lot of information, even on LinkedIn. So I'm not sure there's that much out there that isn't already known. But how about this? I don't think I've ever talked about this, but as a child and even as a teenager, I was a competitive gymnast. I was like pretty
Oh,
serious about it. In fact, I was asked by one of my coaches to go and train for the Olympics one summer, but I was starting junior high school, and the prospect of boys and parties that kind of moved me to turn down the opportunity. But I've been thinking a lot lately about my gymnastics career, and I think it really was my first taste of what it means to put in the work, like to do the heavy lifting, to do really uncomfortable things. And in this case, it was even physically uncomfortable. And I think it's through those experiences that you learn about mastery and grit and how to power through really those character building experiences, things that the most wonderful things in life don't come easily. And sometimes the hardest things in life that don't seem like much of an opportunity are the things that actually deliver the greatest gifts and opportunities. And I think my gymnastics experience was my first taste of that, and those values have really stuck with me for the rest of my life. So I was a gymnast.
I love that. So from gymnast to gymnast, before we close out the show, what was your favorite tumbling pass?
I love doing back handsprings. Floor was my favorite, and I loved all of the aerial cartwheels, back handsprings, back tucks. Once they started asking me to do them on the beam, I was less enthusiastic, but I just loved powering my way through a tumble line on the floor.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And my final question, if anybody wants to engage in conversation, whether it's about the AI flywheel, gymnastics, or where they could learn about more live person, or how to have those meaningful conversations, where's the best place to reach you or to connect with live person?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Ruth Zive, where, as I said, I'm very overexposed and radically transparent. And then definitely come and check out LivePerson at liveperson.com. We've got a great blog. All of the information about our flywheel is on there. We have a fabulous maturity framework, and you can actually self-assess on our website and find out how mature you are against the flywheel framework that we've brought to market. So
Fantastic. Ruth, thank you so much for getting radically transparent with me today.
thank you, Jen. This was a lot of fun.